You think you're making your own choices. You think you're living your own life. But look closer. See those strings? Your past is pulling them. Your childhood is the puppeteer. And you're dancing to a song that ended years ago. Stop the dance. I want you to take a deep breath. Look in the mirror. Really look. What do you see? You see an adult, a grown person with choices, with power, with the ability to create change in this very moment. But here's what's happening. You're carrying around a story about why you can't, why you're stuck, why nothing ever changes, and that story has become more real to you than your actual potential. Let me ask you something. When you were 5 years old, did you have control over your circumstances? Of course not. When you were 10, could you choose your environment? No. When you were 15, were you responsible for the emotional climate of your home? Absolutely not. But you're not 5 anymore. You're not 10. You're not 15. You're here, right now, reading these words, making choices every single moment about how you respond to life. And yet, there you are, still living as if you're that powerless child, still reacting from wounds that happened decades ago, still giving your past more authority over your present than you give yourself. This is not about dismissing your pain. This is not about pretending difficult things didn't happen. This is about recognizing a fundamental truth that will change everything if you let it. Your past experiences shaped you, but they don't have to define you. Think about this for a moment. Every single day, you make thousands of choices. What to think about, how to interpret events, how to respond to challenges, what story to tell yourself about what's happening. But instead of exercising that incredible power, you've handed it over to people who may not even be alive anymore. You've given your childhood more say in your adult life than you give yourself. I've spent decades studying human behavior, watching people transform, seeing the patterns that keep us stuck, and the shifts that set us free. And here's what I've discovered. The moment you stop blaming your childhood is the moment you reclaim your power. But this isn't easy, because blame feels safe. Blame gives you something to point to, someone to hold responsible. It takes the pressure off you to change. When you blame your parents, you don't have to look at your own choices today. When you blame your upbringing, you don't have to take responsibility for your current relationships. When you blame your past, you can stay exactly where you are and feel justified about it, but here's the cost. Here's what you're paying for that sense of being right. You're paying with your freedom, you're paying with your peace, you're paying with your potential, you're paying with your joy, and the people you're blaming, they're living their lives, or they've passed on. Either way, they're not sitting around thinking about how to fix your problems. They're not losing sleep over your happiness. Only you are. Only you have the power to change what happens next. Let me share something with you. I once worked with a woman who spent 40 years angry at her mother. 40 years. She could tell you every detail of every slight, every moment of neglect, every word that hurt. And she was miserable. Her relationships were disasters. Her career was stuck. Her health was suffering. But she had her story. She had someone to blame. One day I asked her a simple question. How's this working for you? She looked at me with surprise. What do you mean? This anger? This blame, this story you keep telling about your mother, how is it serving your life right now? Silence. Because here's the thing. Your story about your past might be completely accurate. Every detail might be true. But if that story is keeping you stuck, if it's preventing you from creating the life you want, then you have to ask yourself a crucial question. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be free? You can't have both. I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm not asking you to pretend it was okay. I'm asking you to recognize that continuing to give it control over your present is a choice you're making, and you can make a different choice right now. Today, this moment. But here's where it gets tricky. Your mind will fight this. Your ego will resist. Because admitting that you have power means admitting that you've been choosing to stay stuck. That's a hard truth to swallow. It's easier to believe you're a victim of circumstances than to acknowledge you're the author of your own experience. It's more comfortable to think someone else is responsible for your happiness than to accept that job yourself. But comfort is not the goal here. Growth is. Freedom is. Peace is. And those things require courage. The courage to look at your life honestly. The courage to stop making excuses. The courage to step into your power as an adult human being. Let me tell you what I see when people make this shift. When they stop blaming their childhood and start taking responsibility for their choices, everything changes. Their relationships improve because they stop expecting others to heal their old wounds. Their careers advance because they stop sabotaging themselves with limiting beliefs. Their peace of mind returns because they stop fighting battles that ended years ago. They become free, but this transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's not a one-time decision. It's a daily practice, a moment-by-moment choice to respond from your adult self rather than your wounded child. And here's what that looks like practically. When something triggers you, instead of immediately going to your story about why this always happens because of what someone did to you years ago, you pause, you breathe, you ask yourself, how do I want to respond to this as the adult I am today? When you feel that familiar anger rising, instead of feeding it with old grievances, you recognize it as information. You feel it, you acknowledge it, and then you choose what to do with it. When you catch yourself saying, I can't help it, this is just how I am because of my past, you stop. You remember that you're not that powerless child anymore. You have choices now that you never had then. And this is the work. This is the path to freedom. And yes, it's challenging because it means letting go of a story that's been with you for so long, it feels like part of your identity. It means stepping into unknown territory. It means taking full responsibility for your life moving forward. But here's what's on the other side of that challenge. You get to become who you really are. Not the wounded version, not the limited version, not the stuck version, the real you. The you that exists beyond your past. The you that has unlimited potential for growth and change and joy. That person has been waiting your whole life for you to recognize them. They're still there. Underneath all the old stories and limiting beliefs, they've been there all along. You just have to stop blaming your childhood long enough to let them emerge. Now I know what some of you are thinking, but you don't understand. My situation was different. My pain was real. My circumstances were truly difficult. And you're right, I don't know your specific story. I don't know what you endured, and I'm not minimizing your experience. But I do know this. Whatever happened to you as a child, continuing to let it control your adult life is not serving you. It's not honoring your growth. It's not creating the change you want to see. And more importantly, it's not what that child version of you would want for you now. Think about it. If you could go back and speak to yourself as a child, what would you want for that little person? Would you want them to spend their entire adult life angry and stuck? Would you want them to never move beyond those painful experiences? Of course not. You'd want them to heal. You'd want them to grow. You'd want them to create a beautiful life, despite what happened. You'd want them to use their experiences to become stronger, wiser, more compassionate. You'd want them to be free. Well, that child is depending on you now, the adult, you, to make the choices they couldn't make, to create the life they couldn't create, to become the person they always had the potential to be. Don't let them down. Every moment you spend blaming your past is a moment you're not investing in your future. Every ounce of energy you put into old grievances is energy you could be using to build something beautiful. Your past gave you information. It taught you what you don't want. It showed you what needs healing. It developed your empathy and resilience. It made you who you are, but it doesn't get to make you who you become. That's your job now, your choice, your responsibility, your opportunity. And it starts with a simple recognition. You are not your past. You are not your story. You are not your wounds. You are a creative, powerful, unlimited being who has the ability to choose your response to everything that happens. You always have. Even when you were young and your options were limited, you had that power. The power to choose your inner response. The power to maintain your sense of self. The power to decide what these experiences would mean. Now, as an adult, that power has multiplied exponentially. You can choose where to live, who to spend time with, what to focus on, how to interpret events, what story to tell yourself about your life. You can choose forgiveness, not for them, but for you. Because forgiveness is not about condoning what happened. It's about releasing the grip it has on your present moment. You can choose gratitude, not for the pain, but for the strength it developed in you, for the compassion it taught you, for the wisdom it gave you about what really matters. You can choose love, not naive love that ignores reality, but mature love that sees the flawed humanity in everyone, including those who hurt you, including yourself. These are not easy choices. They require tremendous courage and commitment. But they are available to you right now. The question is, will you make them? Will you stop giving your past authority over your present? Will you reclaim your power as an adult? Will you choose freedom over blame? Or will you continue to live as if you're still that powerless child, waiting for someone else to fix what's wrong, expecting the world to accommodate your wounds? The choice is yours. It's always been yours. It will always be yours. But here's what I want you to understand. Making this choice doesn't mean you have to do it alone. It doesn't mean you can't get help. It doesn't mean you should ignore the need for healing. What it means is that you approach healing from a position of power rather than powerlessness. You work with therapists and coaches and trusted friends, not because you're broken and need fixing, but because you're committed to growth and want support. You do the inner work not because you're a victim who needs rescuing, but because you're a conscious adult who takes responsibility for your emotional well-being. You address your patterns and triggers not because you're at the mercy of your past, but because you're creating your future, and you want to do it consciously. This is the difference between healing as a victim and healing as an empowered adult. The victim says, "Fix me because I'm broken." The empowered adult says, "Support me because I'm growing." Which one are you? Which one do you choose to be starting today? Because I can tell you from decades of observation and personal experience, the people who create truly fulfilling lives are not the ones who had perfect childhoods. They're the ones who took responsibility for their adult choices, regardless of their childhood experiences. They're the ones who said, "What happened to me was real, but what I do with my life from this point forward is up to me." They're the ones who stopped waiting for someone else to give them permission to be happy and gave it to themselves. They're the ones who realized that their past was just the opening chapter of their story, not the entire book. You have the power to write the rest of your story. Every day, every moment, every choice, but you can't write it if you're still letting your past hold the pen. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Right now, today, stop blaming your childhood. Not because it wasn't real, not because it didn't matter, not because it was okay. Stop blaming it, because you're an adult now, because you have power now, because you have choices now. Stop blaming it, because your future is more important than your past, because your potential is greater than your pain, because your freedom is worth more than your story. Stop blaming it, because that child you used to be is counting on the adult you've become to create the life you both deserve. You have everything you need. You have intelligence, you have creativity, you have resilience, you have the ability to learn and grow and change. You have this moment. You have the next moment. You have all the moments that follow. What will you do with them? Will you use them to stay stuck in old patterns, replaying old hurts, nursing old grievances? Or will you use them to create something new, something beautiful, something that honors both where you've been and where you're going? Let me tell you about another person I encountered. A man in his 50s, successful by most standards. Good job, nice house, but empty inside. He came to me carrying a briefcase full of resentments. His father never said, "I love you." His mother was critical. His siblings got more attention. The story went on and on. And so, it went on and on. Do you know what I realized? He told me months later. I was 53 years old, and I was still waiting for my parents' approval. I was still living my life, trying to prove something to people who gave me life decades ago, but couldn't give me what I needed then. And then what happened? I asked. I stopped waiting. I started approving of myself. I started being the parent to myself that I needed. I started giving myself the love I was waiting for them to give. This is the shift. This is the moment everything changes. When you realize you've been waiting for someone else to heal you, someone else to validate you, someone else to tell you you're enough. But that someone else is you. It's always been you. And here's what most people don't understand about this process. They think taking responsibility means being hard on themselves. They think it means never acknowledging the real impact of their past. They think it means becoming cold or disconnected. Nothing could be further from the truth. Taking responsibility is actually the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself. It's saying, I matter enough to heal. I matter enough to grow. I matter enough to create change. It's recognizing that you were worthy of better treatment then, and you're worthy of better treatment now. Starting with how you treat yourself. Because here's what I've observed. The people who stay stuck in blame often become their own worst critics. They internalize the voices that hurt them. They continue the patterns of neglect or criticism or dismissal. But now, they're doing it to themselves. They've become their own bad parent. But when you take responsibility, you become your own good parent. You become the nurturing, supportive, encouraging presence you always needed. You give yourself the patience you never received. You offer yourself the understanding you were denied. This is not selfish. This is essential. You cannot give what you do not have. You cannot love others well if you haven't learned to love yourself well. You cannot create healthy relationships if you haven't healed your relationship with yourself. And you cannot heal your relationship with yourself while you're still blaming your past for your present reality. Let me ask you something. When you blame your childhood, what are you really saying? You're saying that what happened to you was so powerful, so defining, so overwhelming, that it continues to control you decades later. Think about that for a moment. You're giving your past more power than you're giving yourself right now. You're saying that 5-year-old you or 10-year-old you or 15-year-old you had more influence over your life than the adult you sitting here today. Does that seem right to you? Does that honor who you've become? Does that recognize the strength you've developed? Does that acknowledge the wisdom you've gained? Of course not. You are not the same person you were then. You don't have the same limitations. You don't have the same lack of choices. You don't have the same powerlessness. You have grown. You have learned. You have developed resources and capabilities and insights that didn't exist back then. But when you stay stuck in blame, you're ignoring all of that growth. You're dismissing all of that progress. You're minimizing all of that development. You're treating yourself as if you're still that child with no options, no voice, no power to change anything. But you're not that child anymore. And it's time you started acting like it. It's time you started honoring the adult you've become. It's time you started recognizing the power you now possess. It's time you started using that power to create the life you want, instead of explaining why you can't have it. Because every moment you spend in blame is a moment you're not spending in creation. Every ounce of energy you put into resentment is energy you're not putting into building something beautiful. You are the only one who can give yourself what you truly need. You are the only one who can heal those old wounds. You are the only one who can break those generational patterns. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you stop needing them to be different, they often become more loving. The moment you stop demanding they give you what they couldn't give, they sometimes offer what they can. But even if they don't, you're free. Because your happiness, your peace, your sense of worth no longer depends on their actions or approval. You become self-sourced, self-validated, self-loving. This is what emotional maturity looks like. This is what taking responsibility for your life really means. Not blaming yourself for what happened, not pretending it didn't hurt, not bypassing the legitimate need for healing, but recognizing that you are now the adult in charge of your healing. You are now the parent to your own inner child. You are now the author of your own story. And that story doesn't have to be a tragedy. It doesn't have to be a victim narrative. It can be a hero's journey, a story of transformation, a tale of someone who took their pain and turned it into purpose. Your wounds can become your wisdom. Your struggles can become your strength. Your past can become the foundation for an extraordinary future. But only if you stop blaming it for keeping you small. Only if you start using it to help you grow. The choice is yours. It's always been yours, and it's time to make it. Your past shaped you, but it doesn't get to limit you. Your childhood influenced you, but it doesn't get to control you. Your wounds taught you, but they don't get to define you. The more you are so much more than what happened to you. You are so much more than your story. You are so much more than you've allowed yourself to believe. And the moment you stop blaming your childhood is the moment you start discovering who you really are. That person is waiting. They've been waiting your whole life. They're the version of you that knows their worth without external validation. They're the version of you that loves without condition. They're the version of you that creates without limitation. They're the version of you that your childhood self always dreamed you could become. Isn't it time you met them? Isn't it time you became them? The moment is now. The power is yours. The choice is clear. Stop blaming your childhood. Start living your adulthood. The butterfly you're meant to become cannot emerge until you stop clinging to the cocoon of your past.